All right, so today we are diving deep into Elon Musk.
Okay.
You sent over a ton of material on him.
Yeah.
Articles, videos. There's even a podcast in here called Drinking from the Social Media Fire Hills. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, you weren't kidding around.
I went deep.
Yeah, you did. You really did. The big question that keeps coming up is this guy like a visionary, like a Steve Jobs type who's dragging us all into the future kicking and screaming?
Right.
Or is he kind of more on the reckless billionaire ego trip side of things?
I think that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, going through all of this, how much his story, like his actual personal journey, kind of bleeds into how he acts publicly and how he runs his companies.
Right.
Like you can see a through line from some of his experiences early on, especially that Goalcast video that you sent.
Yeah.
About his childhood.
Yeah.
And like his dad sounds kind of intense. And
Oh, yeah.
it sounds like there was just a lot of like maybe not great stuff there.
Yeah, it sounds pretty rough.
And you kind of see that desire for control, almost like an obsessive need to be the hero.
Right. And that whole hero thing, that complex pops up everywhere, right? Like Tesla, he's saving the world from, gas-guzzling cars.
Absolutely.
Then SpaceX, it's all about making humanity multiplanetary, like we're going to be refugees on Mars someday.
Right.
And then Twitter, that was all about saving free speech.
Yeah. And that's where it gets really fascinating, right? Because you have these early successes, the Zip2 thing, PayPal, which, I mean, huge, obviously.
Shit him a ton of money, but...
Yeah, but they didn't have that same weight, like saving the planet.
Yeah, they were just businesses, not like world historical.
Right. Exactly. So it's like those ventures, while financially successful, weren't big enough for him.
Like he needed something more.
Yeah, like he had to shoulder the weight of the world, or at least that's how it seemed.
So, okay, you've got this ambition, this hero complex, and then he sets his sights on Twitter. What happens next?
Well, this is where I think things get even more interesting. He comes in, buys Twitter, of course, we all know that, but then all of a sudden it's this huge battle over bias.
Bro, he's saying the platform is corrosive, whatever that means.
Right, and that it's like super biased against, anyone who isn't super liberal.
And that's where that Johnny Harris video you sent comes in, right? About the algorithm.
Yes.
Yeah.
That video is great because it just breaks down all the facts. So Musk is going on and on about how Twitter's algorithm is silencing conservatives.
Right, like shadow banning and all that.
Exactly. But the thing is, and the study that Harris talks about proves this, it was actually the opposite.
Wait, really?
Yeah, right-leaning content was often amplified, like way more than anything else.
Wow, so this whole saving free speech thing, was that all just...
I mean, it makes you wonder, right? Was this really about free speech, or about him wanting to control the narrative, deciding what's okay and what's not?
That's a pretty heavy accusation,
That's true, but you have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then there's how he treats people, like those engineers at SpaceX who got fired for criticizing him.
Oh, right, and then he calls them a bunch of names online.
And this whole hardcore work ethic thing, like, wasn't that basically an ultimatum? Work crazy hours or get out.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's not just Twitter, right? That lines up with what we see at Tesla, SpaceX, all of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about his personal journey being so intertwined with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Those stories about him sleeping on the factory floor at Tesla.
Right.
He demands that same intensity from everyone around him.
Which, let's be honest, can be pretty brutal.
Oh, absolutely. There's this ruthlessness there, Like that whole thing with his assistant, what was her name? Mary Beth Brown.
Oh, right, yeah, she was with him for years.
Yeah, like over a decade. She dedicated her life to keeping his world running smoothly.
Right, basically ran everything.
And then boom, he just lets her go.
Cold.
Ice cold.
And it just makes you think about his leadership style and maybe even, his whole worldview. Like, is he really trying to build a better future for everyone, or just trying to force his vision of the future on everyone else?
I think that's a question worth considering.
Yeah.
And it's not just, people in his inner circle.
Right.
It's how he deals with anyone who criticizes him, especially online.
Which brings us to that digital sharecroppers thing from that podcast.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's a provocative way to put it. What did he mean by that?
Well, he's talking about this power imbalance.
Okay.
Like, we're all on these platforms, right?
Right.
Sharing our thoughts, our photos, our data.
Creating content, making these companies billions of dollars.
Exactly. And we have almost zero control over any of it.
It's like we're working the fields, but someone else owns the land and gets to sell the crops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're digital sharecroppers on Elon Musk's internet.
Okay, so how does that actually play out? Give me an example.
Well, look at how he reacted when those engineers from SpaceX criticized him.
The ones who wrote that open letter?
Yeah, those guys. They called him out, said his behavior was, and I'm quoting here, juvenile and crude.
And that it was creating a hostile work environment.
Exactly. And what did he do? Fired them.
Right. And then went on Twitter
and basically said they were wrong, that he could say whatever he wanted.
Which, hold on, that contradicts his whole thing about free speech, doesn't it?
Right. It's like he's all for free speech until someone says something he doesn't like.
So much for being anti-fragile, which he claims to be.
Exactly. And this kind of inconsistency, I think, is where his whole image starts to fall apart.
Okay, so we've got the free speech contradictions, the treatment of employees.
And then there's the whole issue of censorship.
Right, you're talking about those cases in Turkey and India, right?
Exactly. Before Musk took over, Twitter was actually pretty good about pushing back against censorship.
Really?
Yeah, they stood up to governments, even when it meant losing money, getting banned.
Wow.
They defended people's right to speak out.
Wow.
They defended people's right to speak out, even when those people were criticizing those in power.
And now?
Well, now it seems like Musk is more interested in keeping those governments happy.
Because of Tesla, SpaceX, his businesses.
Exactly. He doesn't want to jeopardize those deals, so.
So much for being a free speech absolutist.
Makes you wonder about his priorities. But
yeah. It's almost like he cares more about being a global player than about, actual free speech.
That's a good way to put it. And then there's the whole AI thing.
Oh, right. XAI. He's going all in on artificial intelligence now.
And I'm just saying, his track record on this stuff isn't exactly reassuring.
Because?
Well, we've seen what happens when he gets excited about something and then rushes into it.
You're talking about the ventilators, the self-driving cars.
Exactly. Big promises, lots of hype.
Yeah.
And then, reality sets in. Delays, unfulfilled promises, that kind of thing.
Like his whole plan to put 1 million people on Mars by 2050.
Exactly. It's starting to feel like a pattern.
Overpromise, underdeliver, but in the meantime, his power just keeps growing.
And that's the thing, right? When you cut through all the noise, all the memes, all the Twitter fights, you have to ask yourself,
is this guy for real?
It's exactly. Is Elon Musk really this visionary who's going to save us all? Or is he just really good at manipulating people, exploiting our hopes and fears for his own gain?
And with AI, that's a whole other level.
Right, because now we're not just talking about cars or rockets.
This is about technology that could, reshape society.
Exactly. And the potential for misuse, for things to go really wrong, it's huge.
And he's in charge of, it used to be the public square, right? Now it's just his square.
Right, and that's what makes this whole thing so, important. Like, we can't just be passive about this.
Right.
We can't just take in whatever he's putting out there. We have to actually think critically.
Okay, so after all this, after all these articles and videos and podcasts, what's the takeaway? Who is Elon Musk?
It's tough to say, really. He's this mix of, brilliance and kind of recklessness. He's obviously brilliant. You can't deny the guy's smart.
Tesla, SpaceX, come on.
Exactly. But then there's this other side, this almost like a blind ambition.
Which leads to, let's be honest, some pretty bad decisions.
Right. And he just seems to leave a trail of, broken promises, hurt people.
Right. And it's like he wants to save humanity, but he doesn't get humans,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And that reminds me of that quote from his ex-wife, Justine. She said, Elon's judgment overrides everyone else's. It's like, he's so convinced that he's right, always.
And that's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That certainty, it can be good, obviously. It's probably why he's achieved so much.
Right.
But it can also be dangerous, because what happens when he's wrong?
Which brings us back to Mars, right? This whole idea of colonizing another planet. Is that about saving us, or is it more about him wanting to, escape?
I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Is he trying to build a better world or just build a new one where he gets to make the rules?
And maybe he doesn't even know the answer, Maybe it's both.
Yeah, that's what makes him so fascinating, so frustrating.
And so powerful, We're all kind of caught up in his story now.
So where do we go from here? What do we do with all of this?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed. Don't just take things at face value.
Right.
Question everything, especially when it comes to powerful people like Elon Musk.
Do your own research, right?
Exactly. Don't just accept the narrative.
Yeah.
Because the future, whether it's here on Earth or on Mars, it's still being written.
And we all have a part to play in that story.
Exactly. So, stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, never stop asking questions.
I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thanks for diving into this with me. It's been enlightening.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always enjoy these conversations.